assurances, which is the guiding document required by the state to meet the governor's executive order. Superintendent Dr. Donald Fenoy will speak first to give an overview of the executive order and its impact on our students. Next, Deputy Superintendent Mr. Keith Oswald and Chief Academic Officer Dr. Glenda Sheffield will provide information regarding specific assurances mandated in the executive order and the actions that parents will need to take upon returning from break. Now we'll begin with Dr. Fenoy.
Good morning, everyone. As we head into winter break, I'd like to update you, our staff, our students, and our parents on important educational and health-related matters. Our principals, faculty, and school-based maintenance and facility crews have done a remarkable job since we reopened our campuses on September the 16th. Following strict COVID-19 safety protocol mandated to mitigate the spread of the virus. Our students have also complied by wearing their masks and social distancing. The Florida Department of Health in Palm Beach County, which conducts contact tracing of confirmed cases involving our students and staff, continues to advise us that transmission is primarily occurring off campus. In order to keep our campuses as safe as possible when schools reopen in January, I must stress the critical importance of following the CDC's COVID-19 safety guidelines during winter break. While enjoying the holidays with family and friends, please remember that this is not the time to let down your guard. Travel may increase your chance of spreading and getting COVID-19. The CDC continues to recommend postponing travel and staying home, as this is the best way to protect yourself and others this year. Any student or member of staff who develops COVID-like symptoms over the break should be tested and not return to our schools until they are assured that they do not carry the virus. We all play a role in the safety of our community, our schools, and one another. As I mentioned, classes resume on January 4th, 2021. That is also the date that the window will open for parents and guardians to enter the student portal and make their choice of instruction, either in person or distance learning for the remainder of the year. We are discussing this with you now prior to winter break to give parents ample time to consider which educational modality is best for their child. The Department of Education's executive order allowing parents choice for the remainder of the school year also mandates assurances from the district, one of which is that schools must remain open. Another very important assurance is Assurance 5. Assurance 5 requires that districts inform parents of students who are not making adequate progress in distance learning that they should strongly consider returning their students to in-person instruction as a form of intervention. While appropriate interventions are important for all students and currently being carried out by our principals, those families who have chosen distance learning but are continuing to struggle academically will be prioritized for returning to in-person instruction. Parents should take the opportunity to review their child's recent progress report or report card to guide their students' progress. On January 4th, when the one-week window opens for parents and guardians to make their decision, parents of students in distance learning who are not making adequate academic progress will see a letter from the district informing them that their child is at risk and that in-person instruction is recommended. In just a few minutes, you will see a demonstration of how parents will access the student portal and the steps that they will take as they proceed through the process. From a safety standpoint, the district is prepared to accommodate students who will transition from distance learning to in-person instruction. Let me be clear. The goal is to ensure that all students reach their full potential, and our district is taking every opportunity to ensure that students are being educated in as safe as an environment as possible. Before we get more granular with the process, I'd also like to update you on the status of the district's Spring 2021 education plan and assurances. We have submitted our plan to the state. I feel confident that the methods by which we have documented how our district will comply with the state's assurances will be well received by the Department of Education. The state hasn't informed us yet as to when our plan will be reviewed or when it will be and when we will receive approval. At this time, I now invite our Deputy Superintendent Keith Oswald to the podium to dive deeper into our Assurance 5 and how it will be implemented. Mr. Oswald?
Thank you, Dr. Fenoy. And good morning, everyone. It's good to see you all today. Since we opened our schools brick and mortar, our teachers, our school administrators have done a phenomenal job of teaching students not only that are brick and mortar, but those who are also in distance learning. But as Dr. Fenoy had mentioned, a number of our students we've identified are still struggling in the distance learning environment. So our schools have been working hard to get a number of our students back into brick and mortar where we can provide a better environment. And you also heard Dr. Fenoy mention that our schools are safe. The mitigation strategies that our school district has put in place, secondary transmission, as verified by the Department of Health, is not happening in our classrooms, except in a few isolated events such as athletics. So now with the executive order 2020 EO07 coming out, and as Dr. Fenoy mentioned, assurance number 5 does require us as a school district to execute a deeper level of awareness for our families. In particular, those students in the innovative learning environment, in the modality, which is what we often call distance learning, who are failing to make adequate progress, that those parents or guardians, that they must be contacted, and those students must return back to face-to-face instruction. However, if a parent refuses to do that, the parent must be provided written notification that their child is struggling and obtain written acknowledgement from that parent of the potential consequences by the lack of adequate progress their child is making. However, their intent is to remain in distance learning. In addition, when those students return, those parents who choose to have their students come back to face-to-face instruction, the school must provide additional interventions to remediate the loss of learning that has occurred. In a moment when we go live to show you what the parents will experience, they will receive this letter in this form that really outlines the consequences when a student's not making adequate progress. And these are serious academic consequences that, parents really, we need you, if you're listening, to be informed and pay attention. Children are facing such consequences as failure to go on to the next grade, GPAs that are falling below a 2-point average or dropping just at a level that's not adequate. And a most serious consequence is possibility of not graduating on time. So these are serious issues that parents really, if you haven't been paying attention, please lean in and look at how your child is doing. Our district has identified a number of students at different levels based on a set of criteria. So for example, at the elementary level, we have identified approximately 10,000 students who are currently in distance learning that we would like to get back to brick and mortar if a family so chooses. And we identified that in 2 different ways. One, from engagement. And what I mean by engagement, we're talking about students who are signing in fewer than 3 or more times into the portal. So when you go into the computer and sign in, you're doing that at less than a 50% rate, and we can identify that. Or their absences, 3 or more absences in 3 weeks' time. In addition, on the academic side, they have 2 or more NDs on their report card, ND meaning not demonstrating, in their core subject area, such as English language arts, math, science, social studies, etc. So that's approximately 10,000. At the middle school level, we've identified approximately 3,800 students at the middle school level that are currently in distance learning. Here, we looked at student absences, 3 or more absences in 3 weeks' time. Excuse me. And when it comes to the grades, they have 2 Fs in their core, 2 or more Fs in their core subjects. Again, English language arts, social studies, science, etc. And at the high school level, we've identified approximately 8,000 students at the high school level that have that same criteria, absences as well as 2 or more core Fs. So those particular students, when parents sign into the portal on January 4th, and when they log in, they're going to receive this letter, and we're going to show you what that looks like. Outside of those students that we identified from the school district level, a school may identify additional students who need, and we're going to request them to come back in brick and mortar because perhaps they're struggling in some other areas in their coursework that we have not identified at the central office level. And again, I want to reiterate that our teachers, as well as our principals, have been working with families to get them back where they feel safe. We put a lot of mitigation strategies in place to ensure that if a parent is worried about this decision, that our schools are safe. So at this time, I'm going to ask Crystal Washington who's a general manager of operations, to come up and demonstrate for you what a parent will see for a child who is struggling when they log in to the portal.
Good morning and happy holidays. So we are currently in a test environment, so you're going to see this banner on top, but when a student logs into the portal, they will see a Make Your Choice tile, which will look very similar to this. When they log in, they will see this letter if they are not making adequate progress. The letter is available in English, Spanish, Creole, and Portuguese. The student's name will be right here, Riley Student, and they will have the option of reviewing the letter. And again, this letter will only be available to those who are not making adequate progress. If they are making adequate progress, they will have the option of returning to distance learning, returning to brick and mortar, or remaining in distance learning. Once they read the letter, they will have to acknowledge, as Mr. Oswald said, the receipt if they're not making adequate progress, and they will choose if they're going back to face-to-face instruction or if they'll remain in distance learning. From there, they will put in their contact information, so great parent, their number, email address, and press submit. All of the instructions for this are available on our portal and on our webpage as well. And again, any student who is going in will need to make this selection. Once they make the selection and hit submit, they will then get a summary page of all of the information they have, and then they will be able to make their transportation selection as well. And again, it seems like a lot of prompts to go through the portal, but once they follow through, it'll be pretty simple and easy. Thank you, Mr. Oswald.
Thank you. Ms. Washington, appreciate that. So on January 4th, our Make Your Choice window opens. That's the day we return from winter break. All families who are currently in distance learning, so if your child is not struggling, they do also have the option to come back to brick and mortar if they so choose. They will also go through the portal and acknowledge they just would not see this letter if they're not struggling and not making adequate progress. But it's essential when we return on January 4th for any parent who is in distance learning to please go into the portal, go to the Make Your Choice tile to see. If you're not sure if your child is making adequate progress, you can immediately reach out to your school principal, your teachers, to find out that information, or you can go into this portal. We will be sending out a number of communications from our central office here to alert parents of this when we return. But again, I can't thank you enough for letting our community know, for our parents to really pay attention to how your children are doing. We want to make sure that they are successful. There are a number of other requirements in this executive order, so at this time, I'm going to call up Dr. Glenda Sheffield, our Chief Economic Officer, to talk to you about the rest of the requirements. Dr. Sheffield.
Good morning. As Dr. Fenoy indicated earlier, the district has submitted the Spring 2021 Educational Plan and Assurances. Within this plan, there were 7 assurances that I'm briefly going to highlight this morning for the community at large. It is imperative that these assurances be shared, as it is an overview of our educational platform for the upcoming spring semester. And as I move into Assurance 1, which talks about all schools remaining open, and as we currently know, all of our district-operated schools are open 5 days a week, Monday through Friday. In addition to our schools being open, brick and mortar, our families also have the opportunity for a continuation of learning for services through our distance learning platform. Those 2 options continue to be available to our families within this new assurances. Assurance 2 talks about us continuing to offer a full panoply of services. This is to include providing our IEP services as necessary to ensure that our identified students receive the appropriate education and remediation. Working to identify those students that may have regressed during this change in their educational platform, and also providing continuation of services for our ELL students, and most importantly, aligning the appropriate services for our ELL students that are not improving academically. And as we move on to Assurance 3, that talks about the continuation of our progress monitoring and interventions, this is very important because those students that are not performing well academically in distance learning, As Mr. Oswald indicated earlier, as he talked about Assurance 5, that those students are going to be encouraged and highly recommend to return to brick and mortar. And in doing so, those students, if they should choose to return to brick and mortar because they are not performing well in that distance learning platform, they're going to be receiving monthly progress reports. They're also going to be receiving additional interventions outside of the core instruction. And as we all know, in receiving the additional interventions, as we are trying to continuously work in closing the achievement gap, we will be able to do so much more in having those students face-to-face in brick and mortar. The continuation of the supplemental services for all students will continue, and notice I say all students, as we're talking about those students that are not performing well academically and have accounted some instructional gaps. What we do know is participating in this COVID slide that all of our students in some way are experiencing instructional losses. Assurance 5 talks about the continuation of our charter school flexibility. We have been working closely with our charter schools. Our charter schools all submitted their plans here to the district office. We have reviewed their plans. Their plans are here. The state is aware that all of our charter schools have submitted their plans. And thank you to our charter schools for doing such. And Assurance 5, ensuring student success in that innovative learning modality with the parental involvement. As Mrs. Washington has shared with you in regards to a very, very strong component that is new with this most recent executive order in regards to the students participating in distance learning that is not performing well academically. We have an obligation to do, and that is to notify our parents in writing. And parents must acknowledge that they understand that their child participating in distance learning is not performing well academically, and we are encouraging them to return to brick and mortar. But parents also have the option to say, I acknowledge my child is not performing well academically in distance learning. However, as a parent, I am choosing to leave my child in distance learning. And 6, in enhancing the outreach, Assurance 6, what that is doing, it's talking about addressing our truancy and our attendance of our students. Prioritizing as a district, identifying our most vulnerable students, meeting those students that we still have had no contact with, those students that have not yet made any attempt to connect with our distance learning platform or have connected into brick and mortar. We have a team here, Mark Howard, our Chief of Performance Matter, and his team have spent a great deal of time in regards to drilling down the data and looking at those students that have not yet made those kind of connections with us. And one thing that I'm very proud of and what we're going to be doing starting January 4th, because we are committed in wanting to make a connection and engage all of our students. And we will, as a district, will not be satisfied until we know that we have engaged every single student here in Palm Beach County. And to assist with that, starting January 4th, we already have social workers that work within the district during the instructional day. But what we have realized is that many of our families during our normal working hours, say of 7:30 to 4, our families are working. So when we are trying to reach out to our families to see how can we help, how can we make that connection, they are at work, and we're having a very difficult time in doing so. So with our commitment, we will be bringing on some of our social workers that are doing the instructional day will be working part-time in system, meaning after school hours, in the hours of 4 to 8 p.m., to where we will continue reaching out to our families, visiting homes, and to see what is it that we can do as a district, as a system, to help you as a family have your child to reconnect and to be educated within the school district here of Palm Beach County. We will also be working with and trying to identify more of our VPK students and kindergarten students that are eligible, because we realize that it is important that we maximize the kindergarten readiness to improve this long-term achievement. And lastly, with Assurance 7, because there were 7 assurances with this new executive order, and this 7th assurance, the last one, talks about the continuation of professional development. And that continuation of professional development is for our teachers, for our school-based leaders, and then most importantly, our technology component. Because we realize when we talk about the instructional gaps that our students are maybe failing, and wanting to make certain that we are putting together some of those interventions outside of the core instruction, it is our responsibility as a district to make certain that we are working alongside with our teachers, with our principals, and our other school-based leaders, that they have the necessary tools that they need in terms of reaching every single child. And we, again, are committed to working alongside with our district staff. So in closing, the district recognizes that the variances of instructional gap is evident. We also recognize that a systematic approach to assisting our students with the instructional gaps that they may be experiencing is necessary, and the gaps will not be all closed during this summer, as we like to refer to as the summer slide or the COVID-19 slide. Because of such, it is extremely important to know that the district team, we are currently developing a student academic support plan. This academic support plan will be tiered based on student and school needs, and it will include academic support modalities for students not meeting adequate progress, students on grade level, and students performing above grade level. In essence, our ultimate goal is to create an academic support plan that is going to address the needs of all of our students in the coming years. To the district's phenomenal school principals and awesome teachers and other district staff, I say thank you for being fearless leaders. We do recognize the many challenges that are encountered daily, and together we will continue to strive and do our very best during these unforeseen times. To our parents and our community at large, your ongoing support and feedback continue to be appreciated. I say happy holidays to each of you, and at this time I'll turn it over to our Chief of Staff, Mr. Ed Turney.
Before we wrap up, I'd like to take this opportunity to once again stress the importance of following COVID-19 safety guidelines over winter break. Our district is committed to ensuring the safety of both our students and our staff. As Dr. Fenoy stated, our parents can expect an additional update from the district on January 4th once classes resume. I'd also invite you to find more information at our website, palmbeachschools.org/makeyourchoice. And now we have time for a few questions.
And you're going to have more than 20-some thousand students that are receiving that letter encouraging them if they're struggling to return to brick-and-mortar instruction. For the parents of those students that are still concerned about COVID-19, you said there's been additional mitigation strategies happening in the schools. Can you elaborate on expecting an influx of students after winter break, what you guys are doing to make the schools even safer than they are now?
Mr. Oswald, do you want to take that or do you want me to?
When you look at the numbers of how many kids we're asking to come back, it's important to note that we've had the least return of students at the high school level. So right now, only approximately 27% of our students are in brick and mortar. So by adding another additional 8,000 students, and within that 27,000, a large number of those students, the percent that are currently brick and mortar are extremely low. So many of our classrooms, you're only seeing 4 or 5 kids in a classroom. So there's plenty of space for social distancing to continue to occur. Also, the compliance around face coverings continue to be extremely high. Also, at the elementary level, where we have the greatest number, we currently have approximately 43% of those students are in distance learning, so we're talking about an additional 10,000. Also, because class size is smaller at the elementary level, we're able to still continue to monitor closely the social distancing at those various levels. So we'll continue to we monitor that on a weekly basis. Right now, we've been able to maintain the 6 feet social distancing in all of our classrooms here in Palm Beach County, except for maybe a handful of couple of classrooms. So we'll monitor that closely, but we know that the students we identified to return to brick and mortar are the schools that have the least number of students that are currently in brick and mortar. So in addition, we'll continue all the precautions that we currently have in place with enhanced cleaning and sanitization, the hand washing, face coverings, have all shown to be proven effective in our schools.
You mentioned trying to reach students that still have not connected at this point. How many students are you talking about now? How many have been lost in the system and not connected in any way at this point?
So we identified approximately 3,300 students, what we call whereabouts unknown. So those particular students, we've begun to identify and try to find where for example, we have no request for their student records from another school district, or they've never registered. So those particular students where we want to track down and find to either get them back enrolled somewhere in an educational setting, if they're not already currently done so. And Dr. Sheffield mentioned some of the outreach we'll be doing on that component.
And my math is not always accurate, so I'll preface that by saying it. But by my math, it sounds like about 25% of your distance learners are failing. Is that right? And what is your reaction to that?
I'd have to calculate the exact percentage. I don't know if we have that calculation, Mr. Howard. But the percent...
You said 21,000 you've identified as wanting to come back, and then...
It's about 2,200 students to come back. I'm not sure if that's exactly 25% of those in distance learning. Is about a quarter, yeah, so it's about a quarter, yeah, about 25%.
And is that what you expected when you embarked on distance learning? Is that better? Is that worse? Can you kind of just react to that number?
I think the reality is that one of the things that we struggle, all schools struggle across the country, is the engagement in a distance learning environment. So keeping students and having that conversation in a Zoom-type meeting, if you will, so we all understand that, is more challenging. And for some students who, for whatever reasons, that's not the best place for them to learn, we want those students back into brick and mortar so that they can do better. We have seen success where it does work for some students. So is it better or worse? I think, this is all brand new for us, so I'm quite pleased with what our teachers have been able to do in this type of environment. Their skill set is better than it's ever been. However, we still know that brick and mortar, and we've heard from our governor, that's really our preferred preference for educating our children.
Steve, you got anything?
I have another quick question for you. The portal will open for parents on January 4th. That is the first day of classes. Why not have parents make that decision before the first day of classes, so if they do want their children to return to brick and mortar, they can be back in the classroom on day one?
Sure, that's a great question. We communicated months earlier. The school board made the decision to open school later by 3 weeks. So our first semester ends January 28th. So because of that, what we had communicated back out in October is that we would open up January 4th and make that decision, in particular for our secondary schools, when the second semester begins on February 2nd. Because of the executive order, we kind of pushed that timeline up slightly sooner. So we still want to get, most of our students back that want to come back out of brick and mortar on February 2nd at minimum to have that fresh start. But if families want to come in sooner, our school principals will work with those families.
I want to thank you for joining us. This concludes this morning's news conference. Thank you.